Hey everyone, and welcome to a deep dive on the book The Plan, which is by Kendra Adachi. We're going to be
Mm,
looking at it through the lens of time management,
right.
but time management that is specifically designed with women in mind.
Yeah, it's so interesting how she sort of avoids that achieve greatness thing that you see in so much
Hmm.
productivity advice, and instead it's all about integration.
Right.
And so like bringing all the parts of yourself into a cohesive whole.
That is so interesting to me because I feel like we get so caught up in the day-to-day of
Mm,
all the things we have to do. We're not really thinking about time management from that broader perspective.
right.
How do we make that shift? What does that shift even look like?
Well, she argues that when we focus on productivity, that we often end up feeling fragmented
Okay.
and disconnected from ourselves. So we are pursuing these external markers of success
Right.
rather than inner peace and well-being.
She has this really powerful line in the book where she says, "You're not a robot.
Mm-hmm.
You're not a machine to program. You're not something to fix or leverage or optimize."
Right.
And as a woman, I'm like, yes, yes, yes to all of that
Mm.
because it feels like we're just constantly being told to do it all.
Yeah, and she really sheds a light on how the productivity model, which she calls the
Hmm.
productivity industrial complex,
Hmm.
thrives on this sense of inadequacy.
She even says that this complex is projected to generate $79 billion globally in 2024,
Wow.
which is crazy to think about.
It is a massive industry that profits off of making us feel like we
Right.
need to be and do and have more
Have you ever felt that pressure? Like, have you ever felt like you need to buy in the latest productivity?
all the time,
Yeah.
constantly.
It feels like that pressure is everywhere.
Right. And it's designed to keep us perpetually discontent. And so
Hmm.
I think a really important question to ask ourselves is like,
Mm.
how often do we feel compelled to do more, even when we're already stretched so
Oh
thin?
my goodness. All the time. Always. Like, I feel like that's just the baseline expectation is that we should just always be
Mm,
doing more, producing more,
optimizing.
optimizing more.
Yeah.
So if this system isn't serving us, then what does?
Well, she talks about shifting from starting with that future-oriented vision of who you want to be,
Right.
just starting where you are.
Okay.
So, like, acknowledging and
Starting where you are. I love that.
right. Yeah, so like acknowledging like your reality, your
Hmm.
present circumstances,
Hmm.
and starting from that place rather than from this like
Hmm.
idealized future self.
I think that's particularly important for women because our lives are often um,
Right.
kind of in flux.
Yeah.
We have, hormone fluctuations. We have family responsibilities.
Yeah.
It's not this like static picture.
Right. And she has this great quote in there from Alice Roosevelt that says, "Fill what's empty, empty what's full, and scratch where it itches."
That's good.
Right.
How often do we actually like pause and think about what we need right now
Yeah.
before we jump into the planning?
Right. She's really a proponent of like having that pause and really
Mm.
being grounded in the present before you mock any plans for the
Right.
future.
One of the most interesting metaphors in the book, I thought, was this idea of life as a painting, not a puzzle.
Oh, I love that one.
Right. It's
Yeah.
not about like finding all the pieces and fitting them
Mm-hmm.
perfectly.
It's messy.
It's messy, it's evolving, it's
Yeah.
fluid.
And so that really moves us away from like that rigid,
Right.
predefined plan, right? Like you're not trying to force your life into this predetermined shape.
And that leads us into her plan framework,
Mm,
which is prepare, leave, adjust, and notice.
right.
So how does that play into this idea of life as a painting?
Well, I mean, think of it as a pyramid, right?
Okay.
And so like the foundation is all about like what matters most in this season.
She talks about how we over-prepare a lot of times out of fear
Right.
or a lack of self-trust.
Right.
It's like we're trying to control all the outcomes.
Totally. And so she says, there's a right order to preparation. So
Uh,
first, you name what matters,
okay.
then you calm the crazy, and then you trust yourself.
Okay.
And she says you can trust yourself, which I think is so important,
Yeah.
especially for women, who have been conditioned to kind of question their
Yeah.
instincts. So it's like giving yourself that permission to actually trust yourself.
Okay. So once we've prepared, then what?
Then we live.
Right. That's where the live part comes in.
Yeah.
So this is where she talks about the concept of living in your season.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. She says it's so important to understand your season of life
Okay.
and how that shapes your needs and your priorities.
Okay.
Because those things are going to ebb and flow.
She talks about how the pandemic was a really good example of this because it forced people to slow down. and really appreciate the present moment
Right.
and kind of force that perspective shift for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the other side of that coin, I guess, is this pursuit of like the best day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just sets us up for disappointment.
Yeah, and for comparison and judgment.
Right,
It's
exactly.
just, yeah.
So, okay, so we're living in our season. We're
Mm,
acknowledging that.
yeah,
But things are still going to come up. We're still going to need to make adjustments,
right.
right? How do we,
Yeah, and she cautions against the like big black trash bag energy that we get,
what is that?
where we just want to throw everything out and start over.
Oh, yeah,
I think we've all been there.
totally.
But she recommends like focusing on the small intentional adjustments rather than
Yeah.
these monumental overhauls.
I mean, that just feels so much more manageable
Right.
than trying to like revamp your whole life.
Yeah, she gives some examples like setting boundaries with your phone,
Mhm.
delegating tasks, and adjusting your expectations
Okay.
based on like what energy you have available.
So much of what she talks about just like really resonates with me
Mm-mm.
because it feels very like doable.
Right, exactly.
It's not like these huge, overwhelming changes.
Mm,
It's just like small tweaks.
right.
Okay.
And giving yourself permission to like
Mhm.
evolve your approach.
Yeah.
What serves you today may not serve you tomorrow.
Right.
So just being willing to experiment.
She also talks about this idea of noticing without judgment.
Oh, yeah.
Like it says, when you notice without kindness, nothing good comes of it.
It's so true.
It is so true, and it's something that I think we all struggle with because we're so quick to like focus on the flaws or like what's
Yeah.
not working
Yeah.
rather than just noticing and accepting.
Yeah. And like celebrating the things that are going well
Right.
and like noticing your efforts.
So how do we practically do that? Like, how do we cultivate that noticing with kindness?
Well, she talks about starting with the body
Okay.
because a lot of times, like, the first sign that something's off is a physical sensation.
Right.
Are you tired? Are you tense? Are you overwhelmed?
Mm-hmm.
So she says to start by like tuning into those sensations
Yeah.
and then responding with kindness.
I think our bodies are so wise,
Mm-hmm.
but we're often too busy or distracted
Right.
to pay attention.
Yeah.
She also talks about the specific challenges that women face because of hormonal fluctuations,
Right.
which is something that is often completely left out of
Yeah. Traditional productivity advice.
traditional productivity advice, right?
Ignores this completely.
It's like we're just supposed to be on this like linear path
Right.
regardless of what our bodies are doing.
It's like you're supposed to be a machine.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So she actually breaks down like the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle
Mm-hmm.
and talks about how you can actually like align your energy levels
Right.
and like your task preferences
Right.
with those different phases. I have never thought about that before.
It's so interesting, right?
It's really interesting.
It's like working with your body instead against it.
So what does it actually look like to bring your whole self to the table when you're thinking about time management?
It's about honoring your personality,
Sure.
your experiences,
Mhm.
your limitations. Like, not everybody's wired
Right.
to be this productivity superstar.
Right. And that's okay.
And that's okay. Yeah. So it's really about like celebrating your individuality and knowing yourself, like knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses,
Mhm.
knowing what you can delegate, knowing
Right. And what
really
energizes you.
energizes you. Yeah. And creating a system that works for you.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And a lot of self-compassion too.
Yes, so much self-compassion.
Right. Like we're all just out here doing our best.
One of the things that I think is so unique about her approach is the focus on relationships. It's not just about like individual productivity.
Yeah.
It's about like, how do we connect with other people?
She says our time loses its value if we can't sync it
Oh,
with the time of others,
it's so true.
which is such a powerful statement
It is powerful.
because we are increasingly living in a very individualized society.
Right, right.
And we kind of prioritize our own schedules and our own autonomy
Yeah.
over shared experience.
She talks about the Harvard study of adult development,
Hmm.
which, they've been studying this.
Right. It's like a 75-year study or something.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
What they found was that the single biggest predictor
Mm-hmm.
of happiness and well-being was
Close relationships.
close relationships. So it's not about all the stuff we think it's about.
Right.
It's about who we have in our lives
Yeah.
and feeling connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads to the question of like, okay, if we know that,
Right.
how do we actually make time for those connections?
Yeah. And she recommends really being intentional about like creating that space in your life.
So like scheduling in time with friends, family dinners, joining a community group.
Right. Something like that.
Those have to be non-negotiables in your schedule,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And being really mindful of each other's energy levels, like checking in with your partner,
Right.
checking in with your kids,
Yeah. Like, how are you feeling?
Right.
How are you doing?
adjusting your expectations. based on their capacity.
Right, because they're not machines either.
Exactly. Okay, so now let's move into this like more practical realm of like, how
Mm-hmm.
do we manage the to-do list?
Yeah.
We still have to do those things.
Right.
She has this framework that she calls Lighten the Load,
Mm-hmm.
which I love that name.
Right.
I think so many of us just feel so burdened
Yeah.
by the weight of all the things we have to do.
Right.
So tell me about this framework.
So she has 4 steps. Make it visible, make it matter,
Okay.
make it smaller, and make it happen.
Okay, let's break those down.
Okay.
So make it visible. What does that mean?
So that's basically like getting it all out of your head and onto
Okay.
paper. So,
Mhm.
doing a brain dump,
Mhm.
writing down every single task, every project,
Okay.
every idea that's taking up space in your mind.
So it's like actually being able to see it
Right.
all laid out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the next step is make it matter. So once you've got it all out there,
Mhm.
you have to kind of go through and prioritize.
So really thinking about
Yeah.
what aligns with your values,
Mm-hmm.
what's going to have the biggest impact.
Right. What's essential?
Okay.
What can you let go of?
Okay.
And then the next step is make it smaller.
Okay.
So taking those big tasks and breaking them down into smaller steps.
I love that.
Right.
That's my go-to.
Yeah, it makes it feel so
Mhm.
much less daunting.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's like actually putting those smaller steps into
Right.
your calendar, making the plan.
Yeah, scheduling them in, figuring out when you're going to do them, and being realistic about your capacity.
This is like so helpful, this framework, because it just gives you that structure to deal with all that stuff
Right.
that can feel really overwhelming.
Right, and it reminds you that you don't have to do it all at once. You can
Mhm.
take those baby steps
Right.
and, be consistent over time.
She also talks about a gentler approach to weekly planning.
Mm.
Because, those Sunday scaries are real.
Oh, they are, right? So real.
A Sunday night comes and you're just like,
Yeah.
oh my God,
What's coming at me?
I'm not ready for this week.
Right.
So what does that gentler approach look like?
So it's all about approaching it with curiosity and flexibility rather than that rigidity and pressure that we often put on ourselves.
Okay.
So, embracing the week ahead with that sense of like openness and adaptability.
Instead of trying to cram everything in,
Right.
she actually recommends choosing like 3 key priorities
Yeah.
for the week.
Focus on what really matters.
Yeah, less is more in that case.
Right.
And then essentializing your tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So figuring out what actually needs to get done.
What's moving the needle forward?
Okay.
What can wait?
Right.
And then personalizing your schedule. So if you're feeling introverted and you
Right.
need some downtime,
Right.
schedule that. And
Yeah.
if you're feeling super social and energetic, plan some outings with friends.
Okay, so it's about really tuning into your own energy and what works for you.
Right.
Rather than
Yeah.
trying to fit into some
Yeah.
predetermined box.
Right. That external expectation of what a week should look like.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
And then for planning for the month and beyond, she talks about the importance of regular check-ins and adjustments.
Right.
Because life is going to happen, things are going to change.
Things are going to change.
Your priorities might shift.
You have to be flexible.
You have to be flexible, right?
Yeah.
So she recommends actually scheduling in time at the beginning of every month to look at your priorities,
Right.
make any adjustments to your
Yeah.
schedule.
And she recommends doing like opening and
Oh, yeah?
closing ceremonies.
Oh, I love that.
Right. So it's like marking the transitions and celebrating the different rhythms of each season.
And then for tackling those bigger projects and the long-term goals,
Yeah.
she has this tool called the someday list.
I love the someday list.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Well, it's basically a place where you can
Yeah.
capture all your dreams and aspirations without feeling pressured to like take action on them right away.
So it's like that holding space for...
Yeah, it's like your vision board, but
Mm.
like in list form.
Right. Okay, and then how do you actually, like, move those items? From the someday list to, like, actual projects?
So she says, clarify the objectives,
Okay.
set deadlines, and break the tasks down into smaller steps. So really like making them actionable.
Okay, so let's talk about the key takeaways from this book.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, it's a reminder that this productivity industry
Yeah.
thrives on our dissatisfaction.
Right.
And it makes us think that we need all these tools and all these systems, when really what we need is a
Right.
perspective shift.
Yeah.
We don't need more stuff.
We need to think differently.
We need to think differently. The goal is not to master our lives
Right.
or to optimize every.
It's to integrate.
It's to integrate. It's to bring all those parts of ourselves together.
Yeah, like that messy, imperfect whole.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And time management advice should really take into account
Mm-hmm.
the unique experiences of women.
Yes, absolutely.
Like we have fluctuating hormones,
Yes.
we have societal expectations that
Right.
are often very different from men's.
And it's just not acknowledged in
Right.
the traditional productivity.
Wait, so start where you are.
Start where you are.
That's such a good reminder to
Right.
just like,
Acknowledging.
acknowledge
Yeah.
what is
Mm-hmm.
and then go from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love that one.
Life is a painting.
Life is a painting.
Embrace the mess.
Yeah, the beauty in the mess.
The beauty in the mess, the unexpected.
Yeah.
It's all part of the process.
Right.
Prepare in the right order.
Prepare in the right order.
Name what matters. Calm the crazy.
Calm the crazy.
And then trust yourself.
Trust yourself. So good.
You can do it.
Yes.
Liven your season.
Liven your season.
Adjust your expectations.
Mhm.
Adjust your priorities
Yeah.
based on what's going on for you in this moment.
Yeah. Honor your energy
Notice what's happening with kindness.
with kindness.
No judgment.
Self-compassion.
Self-compassion, yeah.
So important.
Right.
Right?
You are not alone.
You're not alone.
Connect with others.
Build community.
Build community.
Sync your time.
Sync your time.
Yeah.
And then
Start small.
start small, make those adjustments, and
Yeah.
celebrate.
Celebrate.
Right?
Yeah.
Celebrate those little wins.
The wins along the way.
We are capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
It's time to like unlock that potential
Unlock it.
and embrace this more fulfilling way of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about perfection.
It's about progress.
It's about progress.
Yeah.
I love that.
Me too.
So what is one small thing that you can do today
Mm-mm.
to approach time management
Yeah.
with that integration
Mm.
and kindness in mind?
Such a good question.
What is one tiny adjustment that will honor your energy, your values, and your vision
Yeah.
for a fulfilling life?
I love that.
It's something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be this big, huge thing.
Right.
It can just be one little tweak.
Yeah, those tiny tweaks can make a big difference.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you for joining us
It's been a pleasure.
for this exploration of The Plan by Kendra Adachi.
Mm-hmm.
We hope that you found it insightful and empowering.
We hope you enjoyed it.
And we will be back next week
See you then.
with part 2
Take care.
of this deep dive.
Bye.
See you then. Bye.
It's incredible what we can accomplish when we shift our perspective in that way and approach it with a sense of like kindness toward ourselves.
And as we go deeper into her framework, I'm realizing how much more this is than just checking things off a to-do list. It's not just about efficiency and productivity. It's
a way of being.
It's a way of being in the world that feels authentic and aligned with our values.
Exactly.
She actually encourages us to look at our beliefs about productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people have this like deep-seated belief that their worth equals their output,
Oh, for sure.
how much they're doing in a given time.
Yeah. And it's dangerous because it sets us up for feeling guilt and shame.
Right, because you're never doing enough.
Right, exactly.
You're never going to be able to do enough to meet that
Exactly.
expectation.
So it's important to like challenge those beliefs
Right.
and to remember that our worth is inherent.
Right, it's not tied to our productivity.
Exactly.
She also talks about the fact that our energy is not static. Right?
Especially as women, right? Like we have these fluctuations throughout the month.
Right, and again, traditional productivity advice does not acknowledge that.
No, not at all.
It's like you should be a machine.
Right, exactly.
You should just be able to crank out the same amount of work
Yeah,
every single day, regardless of what's happening with your body.
right.
So she actually says to align your tasks with your hormonal phase, right?
Yeah, so like for example, during your ovulation phase, which is when your energy is typically the highest, she recommends tackling those creative tasks
Okay.
or the things that require a lot of intuition.
So it's like working with those cycles instead of fighting against them.
Right.
And she actually gives a framework for those days when your energy is lower. She calls
Yeah.
it Tender Today.
I love that.
I love that name. I think it's so beautiful. So tell me about that.
So there's 5 different components.
Okay.
The first one is tender,
Okay.
and it involves acknowledging what feels tender in that moment. So it could be a physical sensation,
Okay.
an emotional state, or a difficult situation.
So really just taking stock of like where you are in that moment.
Exactly.
And then what's next?
Then you've got output. So this is all about like determining what your output for that day is going to be.
Okay.
So it's accepting that like you might not get everything done that you would typically do on a high energy day.
Right. It's about setting realistic expectations
Exactly.
for that low energy day.
Right, exactly. And
Okay,
then
right.
you delegate. So this is about like looking at your to-do list and saying like, what can I delegate? What
Right.
can I ask for help with?
It's so hard to do that sometimes.
It is.
You know, we want to do it all.
Right.
We want to be in control.
I feel like we're burdening other people.
Right. And it's like, no, we can't.
Right.
So then what's the next step?
And then you accept. So that's all about accepting your limitations and releasing that guilt and that pressure to do more than you are capable of.
Okay, so give yourself permission to rest.
Yes.
I think that's a really important one.
It is, especially for the high achievers out there. Yeah.
And then finally?
Finally say yes.
Okay.
So this is all about saying yes to what matters most at that moment.
So if that means resting, then rest.
Right.
If that means connecting with a loved one,
then
do that.
Right. It's about saying yes to what your body needs.
I love this framework. I think it's such a great reminder that we don't have to push ourselves.
Right.
When you're not feeling our best.
It's okay to have those low energy days.
Yeah. Okay, so even with all the planning and the frameworks and all the things, life's going to happen.
Right. Stuff happens.
Things are not always going to go according to plan.
Exactly. And that's okay. She reminds us that plans are intentions.
Right.
Not pass-fail tests.
We should take the pressure off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's okay if things don't go exactly as you envisioned.
Sometimes the detours lead to the best discoveries.
Right. So she talks about learning to pivot when your plan goes awry.
Right.
So what does that look like?
So she has like a 5-step process for pivoting gracefully.
Okay, let's hear it.
The first step is to acknowledge the obstacle. So recognizing that something isn't working.
Okay.
Right? Like that moment where you realize, like, okay, this isn't working.
Right, that reality check.
Yeah, reality check.
Okay.
And then step 2 is to soften your reaction. So this is about like letting go of the frustration, the disappointment.
So easy to get caught up in those emotions.
Right.
When things don't go your way.
Especially if you're a planner, like me.
Okay.
And then step 3 is to name what matters.
Okay.
So this is all about like getting clear on what's the priority in this moment.
Okay.
What really needs my attention.
Okay. So it's like cutting through all the noise.
Yeah, all the distraction.
Right. And getting to the heart of the matter.
Exactly. And then the next step is make it smaller.
Okay.
So taking that obstacle and breaking it down into smaller steps.
Whereas again, break it down.
Make it feel more manageable.
Okay.
And then step 5 is to solve the problem.
Okay.
So taking action to actually address the situation.
Okay, so you've broken it down. Now you're actually moving through those steps.
Right.
Okay.
So I love this process because it really takes you out of that blame and shame cycle.
It gives you a way to move forward.
Right.
Without feeling stuck.
Exactly.
So I think one of the most interesting parts of her book is the way she talks about how important relationships are to time management.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about...
It's not just an individual.
Scheduling. It's about connecting with others.
She says that our time loses its value if we can't sync it with the time of others.
That's powerful. And I think in our culture...
Yeah, in our culture, we're so individualistic.
We're very individualistic. We prioritize our own schedules.
Right.
And our own autonomy.
Yeah.
Over shared experiences.
And she talks about... you know, how the Harvard study of adult development has shown that
the biggest predictor
of
happiness and well-being is close relationships.
It's close relationships.
So it's not about achieving great things.
Right. It's not about
all the stuff.
Yeah, all the external validation. It's about who you have.
It's about who you have
in your life.
So how do we make time for that if we know that that's so important?
Well, she recommends really being intentional about creating space for those shared experiences. So scheduling regular outings with your friends, prioritizing family dinners, joining a community group, something like that.
So making those non-negotiables.
Yeah, putting them on your calendar and then also like being mindful of each other's energy levels in your relationship.
So checking in with your partner?
Right.
Checking in with your kids.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Right, what do you need?
How are you feeling?
How are you feeling?
And
adjusting your expectations based on what they're able to give.
Right, because they're not machines either.
They have their own rhythms.
Okay, so let's move into the practical realm of like, how do we manage that to-do list?
Yeah.
She has this framework that she calls lighten the load. Love that.
I love it. It just feels
yeah.
so perfect.
It's so relatable, right?
Yeah.
Like we all feel that.
Okay, so tell me about it.
So it has 4 steps.
Okay.
The first step is make it visible.
Okay.
And this is about getting everything out of your head and onto paper.
So again, that brain dump.
Yeah.
Just get it all out there.
Get it all out there.
So you can see it.
Okay. And then the next step is to make it matter.
Okay.
So once you've got everything out there, you have to kind of go through and prioritize.
Okay. So it's like, what aligns with your values?
What aligns with your values?
What's going to have the biggest impact?
What's essential? What can wait?
Okay.
You know?
And then make it smaller.
Make it smaller. So breaking it down into those smaller steps.
You're speaking my language.
Right.
Okay. And then
Make it happen.
Make it happen. Yeah. So
now you're actually scheduling those things in.
Right.
And making a plan.
Making a plan. Okay.
Yeah.
I love this framework.
It's so good, right? It just makes it feel so much
manageable.
More manageable, exactly.
Okay. So then she also talks about weekly planning and kind of addressing those Sunday scaries.
Oh, the Sunday scaries.
And anxiety.
So real.
That we all feel.
Right.
So how do we approach that with a gentler mindset?
So she recommends approaching it with curiosity and flexibility.
So instead of rather than that rigidity.
Yeah, the rigidity
that we often put on ourselves.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And so it's about like embracing the week ahead with that sense of
openness and adaptability.
Adaptability.
Instead of trying to cram everything in, she says choose 3 key priorities of the week.
Yeah.
Focus on what matters most.
Yeah. Less is more.
Less is more, yes.
And then essentializing your tasks. So figuring out like
what actually needs to get done.
What needs to happen, what can wait. And
then personalizing your schedule. So again, that comes back to like honoring your energy.
Honoring your energy.
Honoring what you need.
Right, yeah.
So if you need downtime.
Schedule it in.
Schedule it in. Right. If you're feeling super social, schedule that in.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then for planning for the month and beyond, she talks about regular check-ins and adjustments.
Right.
Because life is a moving target.
It is.
Right. Our priorities might shift.
Our energy might shift.
Right. And our circumstances.
Our circumstances, right. So it's all about
yeah.
being flexible and adaptable.
So she recommends taking some time at the beginning of each month.
Okay.
To kind of look at your calendar, look at your priorities and say like, okay, does this still feel aligned?
Okay, so that monthly check-in.
Monthly check-in, yeah.
Okay.
And then doing like opening and closing ceremonies.
Oh, love that.
Right. So it's like marking the transitions.
And celebrating those different seasons.
The rhythms, yeah.
And then for those bigger projects and long-term goals she has.
Yeah. Someday.
The someday list.
Tell me about it.
So this is where you're capturing all your dreams and aspirations.
Yeah.
Without feeling the pressure.
Right.
To take action.
Yeah.
Immediate.
Yeah. It's that holding space.
It's that holding space. It's the vision board in list form.
Exact.
So how do you actually move those items? From the someday list to project status?
Yeah. So she says, clarify your objectives, set deadlines, break the tasks down into smaller steps.
Okay.
So really make them actionable.
Okay. So as we wrap up this exploration of her book, what are some of the key takeaways?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, it's a reminder that the productivity industry thrives on our dissatisfaction and makes us think that we need more stuff.
When really what we need is that perspective shift.
Exactly.
We don't need to buy more things.
We need to change the way we think.
We need to change the way we think.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
The goal is not to master our lives.
Right, to optimize everything.
Optimize everything. It's to integrate. It's to integrate.
Yeah.
Bring all those parts of ourselves together.
The good, the bad, and the messy.
The messy, the imperfects. Right. Okay. Yeah. Time management advice should take into account the unique experiences of women.
Absolutely.
Right. With the fluctuating hormones.
There's a societal expectation.
Societal expectation?
It's just not acknowledged.
Okay. Start where you are.
Where you are.
Acknowledge your present circumstances.
Yeah. And build from it.
And build from there.
Love that one.
Life is a painting.
Life is a painting.
Embrace the mess.
Yeah, the unexpected.
The unexpected.
The detours.
The detours, right?
Yeah.
Prepare in the right order.
Prepare in the right order.
Name what matters. Calm the crazy.
Calm the crazy.
And trust yourself.
Trust yourself. So go.
Live in your season.
Live in your season.
Adjust your expectations and your priorities.
Yeah, your energy fluctuates.
Based on your energy.
Okay.
Notice what's happening with kindness.
With kindness.
No judgment.
Self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You are not alone in this journey.
You are not alone.
Connect with others.
Connect with
Build community.
Sync your time with the time of
Sync your time, right. Yeah. And start small.
Start small.
Make those adjustments.
Yeah, those tiny tweaks.
And celebrate those wins.
The wins along the way.
We are capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for.
No.
It's time to unlock that potential. And embrace that more fulfilling way of life.
Yeah, and it's not about perfection.
It's not about perfection. It's about progress.
It's about progress.
I love that.
Me too. It really is. Just taking a moment to think about that one thing that you could shift can make a big difference in how you approach your life.
Adachi's work offers so many great tools. And it's really not about like finding that perfect system.
No.
Or becoming some kind of like productivity Arnott.
Right.
It's about creating a lifestyle.
It's about creating a life.
That feels good for you. That honors your rhythms and your imperfections and prioritizes what really matters.
Exactly.
one of the biggest things for me is this idea of letting go of the pursuit of greatness and embracing integration.
I think that's so freeing.
It is freeing, right?
Because it takes the pressure off.
To be constantly striving.
To constantly be achieving.
Right.
Yeah.
And she reminds us to start where we are.
Start where you are.
Which is such a good reminder.
Acknowledge.
To just like pause.
Right.
Acknowledge our circumstances.
Our energy levels.
Our energy levels.
Yeah.
And then build from there.
Build from there.
So maybe instead of making this huge to-do list.
Right.
That's just going to overwhelm us. We choose like one or two small things that we can do today.
That feel aligned.
That feel aligned with our energy.
Right.
And she also talks about the importance of noticing what's happening without judgment.
Oh, with kindness.
With kindness, right?
Kindness.
So that means tuning into our physical sensations.
Our emotions.
Our emotional state.
Our energy levels.
Yeah. Our energy levels.
Without criticism.
Without criticizing ourselves.
Yeah.
And also noticing what's going well.
Right.
And celebrating.
Celebrating those ins.
Our efforts.
Yeah, all the things.
I think that cultivating that noticing with kindness is such a game changer for time management.
Really for life in general.
For life in general, right?
Yeah.
It shifts us out of that negativity.
That scarcity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More abundance.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive on the plan, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that time management isn't just about efficiency.
No.
Or productivity.
It's about intentionally creating a life.
It's about creating a life.
That feels good.
That feels meaningful and fulfilling. It's about embracing our wholeness.
Our perfectly imperfect selves.
Our perfectly imperfect selves, right?
Yeah.
And making choices that honor our values.
Our energy.
Our energy.
Yeah.
And our well-being. And remembering that we are not alone.
We're not alone in this.
Connecting with others is so important.
So essential.
So as we close out this episode, I want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
What is one small step that you can take today to approach time management with integration and kindness in mind?
Such a great question to reflect on.
What's one tiny adjustment that will honor your energy, your values,
and your vision for a fulfilling life?
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive on The Plan by Kendra Adachi.
We hope you found it helpful.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Bye.